Hello, hello. So far, 0 viewers. Good. Feel like I'm by myself. Okay, the video is recording. And it looks like audio is going as well. Okay. Very good, very good, very good. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Oh, I have 1 viewer. Hello, 1 viewer. Whoever you are, I guess I could go over here to this page and see. Oh, that's me. Hush. Okay. Very good, very good. Couple watching. Nope, that's just me and you. 2 of us watching. Okay, well, I'm not going to dwell on this page because it will distract me. And let me get over here. Oh, you know what I should do? I should probably put something on my Bach Facebook page. Yeah, this is, by the way, well, there's only maybe some people watching this after the fact. This channel I set up, it's a new channel, APG Live, and it's just basically behind the scenes video kind of going on. I don't really plan on using it mostly for what I'm doing right now, which is recording my show. I plan on just kind of having it on in the background, you know, not all the time, of course. Got to have some privacy, but a way for me to keep in touch with the community. And so um, the video that many of you watch the show uh, is still going to be in its normal place on the Jeff Nielsen YouTube channel, where almost everybody has subscribed. And so I didn't want to put this, raw video on the same page because a lot of people wouldn't want to see that clutter. So I'm going to keep the normal airline pilot guy episodes on the Jeff Nielsen channel, the normal APG channel, and then occasionally you'll see stuff like this on APG Live. Okay, so there we go. Let me put something here. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. Recording. Okie doke. Let's see here. I think we were talking. No, we were listening to Ken's feedback on anti-icing systems when we left off yesterday. Yeah. So it is time now for me to answer and comment upon his audio feedback. Okay, so the audio recorder is recording, the iPhone video is recording, and here we go. Well, thanks, Ken, and welcome back to the Airline Pilot Guide community. I know you've been there the whole time. You just haven't been sending me audio feedback. And man, you really saved it all up, didn't you? In fact, he sent me 2 other pieces of feedback, which we haven't heard yet. That was the longest one, though. Don't want to scare anybody. So thank you for explaining the performance penalties of the anti-icing systems on airplanes. On the jet that I fly, it's a separate engine anti-ice system and a separate wing or airfoil anti-ice system. Yeah, if you have all that on, it really significantly impacts the performance of the jet. So that's something you have to keep in mind. And at least on the airplane that I fly, the McDonnell Douglas 80 and 90 series, the flight management computer does not know when you have the engine anti-icing and airfoil anti-icing systems on. It does not take that into account when it calculates your optimum altitude. So you may actually be operating at a higher altitude than you should be due to the fact that you're operating the pneumatic engine and airfoil icing system. So that's something you have to keep in mind or bear in mind. And one of the clues that you might have as you level off and you get to you get to cruise altitude and you get to cruise power settings to keep you at the cruise speed, if you notice that the margin between where the power is set, either N1 settings or EPR settings, as in my case, and the maximum marking for the power at that altitude. And if you notice it's like very, very close together, that's a bad sign. That should be a red flag that you are operating in at an altitude that is not giving you a very large safety margin. So that should cause you to think, maybe we should look at our operational data manual or whatever the manual is that you use at your airline to see the exact performance and optimum altitudes and that kind of thing. Go in there and with your actual conditions and realize, ooh, we are probably about 4,000 feet higher than we should be with all this stuff on. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And Ice detectors. The airplane that I fly, Ken, does not have an ice detector. Our ice detectors are our, what'd you call it, the Mark V eyeball, to notice when we're collecting ice. Anytime we're in visible moisture or any clouds, and we notice that the temperature is below plus 10 tat or rat, we turn on our engine anti-icing systems because of the reason that you mentioned about the fact that it's a vacuum and Bernoulli's principle and whatever the laws are, that when you when the air is being sucked into the engine, even at higher than freezing temperatures, the effect of the vacuum sucking it into the engine does cause the water, the precipitation, or the moisture in the air to freeze, and that could affect your engines. So anytime that we see 10 degrees plus 10 or below, and we most of the airplanes that I've flown before the airplane I'm on now, we had kind of a lower limit, like as you I think mentioned, minus 40 degrees Celsius, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore after that. Not true with the airplane that I fly now. They don't state a low end. So anytime the temperature is below plus 10 degrees Celsius, and there is visible moisture, we have to have the engine anti-icing on. And then we also look at our wiper blade. There's a nut on the wiper blade that we look at with a cotter pin, as you mentioned. And if you start seeing some ice crystals building up on that, or you start seeing it maybe in a corner of your forward windscreen, that's the clue that it's time now to turn on the airfoil anti-icing system, which is what it's called on the airplane that I fly, wing anti-ice. So what else did you say? Oh yeah, in the summertime, a lot of people are kind of amazed when they find that we use engine anti-icing and sometimes even airfoil anti-icing year round, whether it's 90 to 100 degrees on the ground. If you're up high, the temperatures really drop pretty rapidly, and if you're in visible moisture, you could actually find yourself in icing conditions even in the summertime, even in the south. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then your pictures that you sent, I'll put them, hopefully I'll remember to put these in the show notes, of the quote mustache. Did it remind you of me when you saw that mustache on the leading edges and other surfaces of your airplane? It's kind of a white mustache. Kind of does look like my stash. Okay, so thanks for that first piece of feedback, Ken. Let's hear what you have to say on feedback 2.
Hello, Captain Jeff. This is Ken, the first officer from Express. Just wanted to add one more quick feedback. I'll try to keep this one a little bit shorter. On the same show, APG 149, you had a listener ask about a stuck throttle, if there was a procedure or checklist for it. I know every company's different. And I just wanted to add at the where I work, we actually had such an event occur not long after I started working there many years back. And they subsequently updated the company checklist, and we now have a checklist procedure for a stuck throttle event in our cockpit now. I don't remember exactly how it goes. I've never actually had it happen to me, but I also have to give credit to our training department. They do a pretty good job of incorporating line events into our annual training, and the stuck throttle was actually incorporated into one of a half dozen events random events that they could throw at us in our when we go in for our annual sim training or line checks in the sim. And I never got this particular scenario in the sim, but I talked to other crews that did get it. And when these things happen as part of our training, uh, for the line event trainings, the instructors actually, and I assume it's probably the same at your work, the instructor at those points is just an observer. They can't do any feedback at all. You're strictly a crew handling a situation, and they're just there to observe to see how every crew does it. And from what I heard is for the throttle event, different crews did different things. Most crews, though, the consensus came out of it was if you have a good engine, you leave it running as long as you can, and that's what most of the crews ended up doing in most of the training events. One of my buddies actually had it on part of his training event that year, and he was telling me I thought his was pretty. He handled it pretty well. I thought when he told me about how they dealt with the situation. He said that they decided to leave the engine running up till they got to 10,000 before they went below 10, and to even take it a step further, they ran through the entire engine shutdown checklist procedure for the stuck throttle all the way to the last couple of steps to actually securing the engine. They only had like a couple items. That way, when they went below 10, they didn't have to break the checklist. They already knew there was only two or three more items that they had to do to shut the engine down, and it was pretty much a non-event at that point. So it wasn't that big a deal. But yeah, a stuck throttle event. Um, I guess it does happen. It can happen. It does happen. It can happen. Hopefully, it doesn't happen very often. But there is at my work we have a procedure and a checklist for it, and we've actually used it as one of our training scenarios in our annual line events. All right, Captain Jeff, that's all I got for this one. We'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Ken, for illuminating us with the stuck throttle procedure at your airline, and do appreciate your feedback on that. And then finally, let's hear from you one more time, Ken.
Hey, Captain Jeff, this is Ken. Just wanted to share one more quick story about icing. This has never happened to me, knock on wood, but I talked to a coworker that this is a severe icing event, and that happened to him over the summer. And I talked to another guy I remember in the past that a similar event happened to him as well, and he described his story. Uh, the outcome is very similar as well. But anyway, for the severe icing, I've never had it happen, but the two stories that I heard, they said when it happened to them, the ice actually started collecting on the N1 blades of the engine, and the vibration indicator, which normally doesn't display in the cockpit, will suddenly appear on the engine status page. And it said not only does it appear, but the stories that I heard, they said it doesn't. It's not long before it takes the needle out and buries it in the red. It goes off the chart basically. And the reason why I said I'm glad to say this never happened is both stories they told me. They said that it feels like the engine's going to fall off the airplane. It's really the whole plane is shaking. They said it's not a comfortable experience. You think you're gonna the engine's going to come apart or something. I guess that's as it starts slinging the ice. There is a checklist procedure. It's actually not under ice. It's actually under the N1 vibration checklist. But it does mention in there that's most likely the cause of what's happening. And surprisingly, it tells you to, of course, you turn on the continuous ignition switches to help prevent any possible flame out that might, that you could incur. That's always a precaution switch we throw on in almost any situation anyway. But the other thing it says too is you push the throttles up. You got to leave those. They said do not pull the throttles back. You want to keep those engines spinning as much as you can. I guess one to help sling the ice off, and two, if those engines are, if there's resistance again, you want to try to fight any resistance of those blades that are going against those blades. So you want to keep as much energy in the engine as possible. But and both outcomes, the stories I heard, they said they followed the procedure, and eventually the ice slung free the engine, and it landed. I remember the one guy I talked to over the summer. He said when they landed, they actually did a bore scope down into the engine. Maintenance came out, and I got to give credit to Pratt and Whitney. No, I think it's GE that makes our engines. I forget. I have to look that up. But anyway, but he said the inspection was fine. The engine handled it. The plane I fly is the CRJ 200, which has the same engines, by the way, as the A10 Thunderbolt, and then also that was used on the S3 Vikings. I think the model number is a different variation, but basically the same. But they're built to withstand it, I guess. So it handled it, and he said maintenance signed it off and put the plane back on the line. But he said when it happened, though, he said it wasn't the most pleasant thing. It felt like the engines were going to come apart, but I've never had that happen. Hopefully, it never will. And anyway, just wanted to share that last story with you on icing, Captain Jeff. We'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.
Ooh, I hope it never happens to me. Thank you, Ken, for sharing that with us as well. Okay, well, now, yesterday I was recording the first part of this episode, and if you're listening to the audio or watching the video on YouTube, you probably don't know that it is now a day later, the magic of podcasting. And it is now Thursday morning. And yesterday afternoon, evening, I started doing a little bit more research and found or stumbled upon we were talking about that uh, incident of a couple of flights on, I believe it was Saturday, let's see, about 5 days ago, where there was somebody tweeting on Twitter that there was a bomb. There were bomb threats made against Delta Flight 1156 and Southwest Airlines 2492. I think those are the right numbers. And they ended up, according to the story, NORAD scrambled some fighters from McEntire Air Reserve Unit in South Carolina, I believe, to join up with these airplanes. And so I found the live ATC audio that somebody had compiled, and we'll listen to the very first part of it. But what I find interesting is it sounds to me like, at least with the Delta flight and possibly with the Southwest flight as well, that the flight crews had no idea that anything was going on. So I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but just let's take a listen to a little bit of this, and then maybe you'll see what I mean.
And Tower Delta 1156, flight just inside Java.
Delta 1156, no problem, sir. Runway 28, wind 260 at 10. Clear the land, plan on exiting at Sierra Golf 4 for me, second high speed to the right.
Okay, we're cleared to land. We'll plan on getting off the second high speed for 1156.
Delta 1156, taxi via right on Sierra Golf.
Right turn, Sierra Golf 1156.
Delta 1156, hold your position there, sir. We're working on a gate for you.
Okay, 1156, we'll hold right here.
Okay, ground over the Tower Delta 1156.
Delta 1156, ground.
Can you give us a heads up of what's going on?
Yes, sir. They're looking for a gate for you right now, sir.
We had a gate. You know what the problem is?
Negative. Stand by 1 second. Let me ask my supervisor.
Okay, so they land, they tell them, and this is not something that is very common for us to get instructed to use a certain, I guess it's not really completely uncommon, but normally they let us use whatever high-speed taxiway exiting the runway that we want. So the first clue that something was a little bit different, again, it's not completely uncommon, but it's not common for them to say, plan on using, the second high-speed exit. And then, they tell them to go off and then basically hold their position. And then the other voice comes on, which I'm assuming is the captain. Yeah, what's going on? Can you tell us what's going on here? Because, and then the guy lies and said, well, I don't, your company says you don't have a gate. And then the captain says, well, no, we do have a gate. What's going on here? So something is just not right. And let's continue a little bit more. That's what I mean by, had they known that they had this bomb threat via an alert to their ACAR system, or had they looked out their window and saw an F-16 fighter accompanying them on their flight, they may have thought, something is going on. But apparently they had no idea that there was a bomb threat made against that flight, number one. Number two, obviously they didn't know that any F-16 was, on their wing or following them. And I'm not even sure if there actually was, because that seems to me something that we would notice unless they were just traveling, right behind us where we couldn't see them, because we don't have rear view mirrors. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit more.
Delta 1156.
Go ahead, 1156.
Yeah, Delta 1156. I'm not able to get enough information. If you want to, just contact your company. They should be able to help you out. And let me know when you're back on frequency, or if you can simultaneously monitor this frequency and can contact your company, that'd be good too.
Yeah, I'm on with you now. He's talking to him on the other right now. So yeah, I'm here with you right now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Tower Delta 1156.
Delta 1156, Tower.
Yeah, I just talked to the company. They told us what the problem was, and they weren't sure what you guys were planning on doing with us, either parking us remotely out here or finding us a remote gate somewhere else out by the terminal there. So I'll just wait to hear from either you or the company first, I guess.
Delta 1156, Roger, sir. We're going to hold you right there for a second, and we're working on that. We'll be right back with you, and we'll keep you in the loop as much as possible.
Okay, so you see what I mean? Now all of a sudden the captain comes back on and says, okay, now I talked to the company, we know what's going on, and are we going to park in a remote area or what, so that's why I'm thinking they had no idea that there was a threat made against the flight. Let me continue here.
We appreciate that.
No problem. As much as we can,
I understand. Tower Southwest 2492 is with you at Jabba.
That's the next
Southwest
one.
2492 at Atlanta Tower, runway 28, wind 280 at 16, clear to land number 1.
Clear to land runway 28 Southwest 2492.
Take all aircraft by the way to Seco departure to Quebec, wind 280 at 16, Atlanta, altimeter 2988. Southwest 2492, plan on exiting at the end of the runway to the right, sir. Roll out to the end.
Roll out to the end, Southwest 2492.
That's not common.
Southwest 2492, continue down to the end of the runway and turn right on Sierra Gulf.
Right on Sierra Gulf, Southwest 2492.
That's the parallel
Southwest
taxiway.
2492, hold your position there, sir. I've been advised they're working on a gate for you.
Hold our position, 2492. This is Tower Delta 1156.
Delta 1156, Tower.
Yeah, I just wondered if you had any updates or anything that we can pass on to our dispatchers.
Delta 1156, stand by. And Delta 1156, still working on some coordination for you, sir.
Okay, copy, right. Tower Southwest 2492.
Southwest 2492, Atlanta Tower.
Yes, sir. Someone we can discuss a plan with. I understand it's not in CSA's hands. It's a local patrolling issue.
I'm sorry, say again your last name?
Yeah, we've been determined that it's not a specific threat. Our company requested that we taxi to the gate to deal with the problem there. We're wondering if we can get a clearance to do so.
Southwest 2492, I have your request. Stand by 1 second.
Okay, this goes on for another, about 25 minutes. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to listen to the whole thing. I actually didn't listen to the entire back and forth, but it goes on, and they end up having to wait for quite some time for Department of Defense personnel to show up, and that was the FBI. Well, the FBI actually gets involved, and they start talking with them, and they end up getting buses and deplaning the passengers and taking them to the terminal to do a full check of the airplane, etc. And I'm not quite as sure with the Southwest flight as I am with the Delta flight that the crews didn't have any idea that something like this was going on. So, and then now you're thinking, or I'm thinking, okay, what if I'm in this situation? We're parked, we just landed, we pulled off the runway, we're on a parallel taxiway, we're stopped, and so all the passengers are going, what's going on? Why are we not moving? You have to, first of all, you have to ascertain what the situation is as the flight crew. Then you have to start coordinating with your company, and then you have to start coordinating with the cabin crew to let them know what's happening. And then at some point, you're going to have to say somehow that there has been a threat made, a bomb threat made on our flight. And now, you got to be careful because you're going to freak everybody out, possibly. So I'm not sure exactly, how this was all handled on the airplane. Maybe there's some cell phone video out there somewhere where somebody uploaded it to YouTube, and you can perhaps hear some of the announcements made. I haven't actually looked for that. Maybe I should look for that, and it'd be interesting to hear. Anyway, turns out that, of course, these were not valid threats. And also last night, when I was doing a little bit more research on this, I different news outlets were saying that in the last 5 days, there have been anywhere from 16 to 20 or more of these threats made upon individual flights. I mean, every day, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm not sure about Tuesday and Wednesday, but I don't know, these are copycat, tweets or Twitterers, Twitter users, trying to have some fun with this whole thing or what. But you'll remember last year, I think that there was a tweet made against an American Airlines flight, and they actually tracked this young lady down. I think it was somewhere in the UK, and they actually arrested her, I think. So I'm sure that the FBI and other agencies are looking into tracking down the whereabouts of these people causing this disruption. But in every case, in the last 5 days or so, these threats made using social media were not valid threats. But you got to be careful. There may be an actual real threat made using social media, so you have to do all kinds of things to vet these threats. So anyway, I just thought it was worth mentioning that there was kind of an update to that. Again, I'll have the link to that live ATC audio in the show notes. Okay, moving on. This is from Josh in Nashville. He says, I've been reading about this gentleman, Bill Harrelson, who just completed a polar circumnavigation of the globe in a single-engine piston Lancer 4. Lots of interesting info on his Facebook page, ZQ Pilot. After being turned back by weather during his first attempt in 2013, he completed the trek on his second attempt, departing Kinston, North Carolina, not Kingston, Kinston, December 28th, 2014, and returning yesterday, January 21st. Of course, that was about a week ago. It's now the 29th. I know I get excited and inspired by endeavors such as this. I thought that some of my fellow APG community members might as well. I've attached the FlightAware track for his final leg. Looks like he flew until he ran out of north. From what I'm reading, that was 4,800 nautical miles and close to 26 straight hours of solo flight. Congrats to Mr. Harrelson. And you can, I'll put this link in the show notes, and the FlightAware graphic here basically shows him leaving North Carolina and just almost heading straight due north over the Canadian northern provinces, the Hudson Bay, the east side of it, heading up into the Arctic, and then back down over Alaska. Interesting. Okay, so I looked up the website and Facebook page and found out a little bit more information about Mr. Bill Harrelson, who is a retired airline pilot. Maybe that's what I'll do when I retire. No, I doubt it. Anyway, again, flying a modified Lancer 4 single-engine airplane, piston-powered by a Barrett IO 550 engine. The airplane was modified to carry a long-range fuel load of 361 gallons. And there's also some information about a real-time tracking site called Spider Tracks that you can kind of follow his journey. Again, he departed Kinston, North Carolina to December 28th. And that, yeah, several of these legs of this journey were extremely long, 26 hours, 29 hours, and he's by himself. And I don't know if this has I hope this has some sort of a autopilot system. I bet it does. Harrelson is having another go at the record-setting flight after being turned away in March 2013 by adverse weather around the South Pole. Bill Harrelson, who watches South Pole weather the way most people check the forecasts for their hometowns, used to think that March was the ideal time for the trip. After the setback in 2013, And with the weather window closing by April on an unusually unfavorable season, he decided that late December might prove a better chance to avoid the potential threats of icing and unfavorable winds. Let's see, the reversal in 2013 wasn't the end of long-distance flying for Harrelson on that effort. His stateside return was accomplished with a 27-hour nonstop flight from the southern tip of South America to a landing in Key West, Florida. Harrelson was already the record holder of distance flown in the aircraft, having made a flight in February 2013 from Guam to Jacksonville, Florida. Wow, a distance of 7,051 nautical miles. And it only took 38 hours and 29 minutes. Holy cow. That is determination, my friends. Thanks, Josh, for letting us know about that. Let's see, more audio feedback, this time from Vernon, former air traffic controller and retired certified flight instructor.
Good afternoon, Captain Jeff. This is Vernon from Fort Morgan, Colorado. Haven't called in for a long time, but I couldn't resist on a couple things. I am cruising along at about 5,000 feet MSL. Regrettably, on the plains of northeastern Colorado, that means I'm on the interstate in a vehicle and not in an airplane. A long time ago, you had some interesting comments on call signs, and there were a couple that came to mind I've been meaning to call you about. I was an air traffic controller in the mid-'70s at Brackett Airport in Southern California, some of your old stomping grounds. And I remember a little Cessna would come through patrolling the power lines and telephone lines, and he used the call sign Telephone Patrol 83 Alpha. But I worked with another controller named Gary Heiner who had a sense of humor, and he never called the plane Telephone Patrol 83 Alpha. He just always called it Telephone Pole 83 Alpha. From Brackett Airport, I moved to Burbank, where Disney Studios had a Gulfstream 159, and its number was 234 Mike Mike. But as you can probably guess, they used the call sign 234 Mickey Mouse. So that's another one I would never forget. I would really love to be able to have that ringtone. One of the other listeners, particularly the attendant call ringtone, but I'm lacking in my technology expertise to get it. I was able to email it from my computer to the phone, hear it on the phone, but to make it with my app on my Samsung phone, to get the app to play it when the phone rings, I just wasn't able to do that. So if anybody has some short advice of that missing link, so when I get a phone call, it would ring the flight attendant call, that would be a lot of fun to have. I'm enjoying episode 150. We'll now go back to driving across the plains and listening to that. Thanks, as always, Captain Jeff, for your good and dedicated weekly shows and wins as appropriate. God bless. This is Vernon, retired CFI and former air traffic controller from Fort Morgan, Colorado.
Watch out. Watch out for that bison on the road there. He's trying to drive and record and being distracted by his Samsung phone. Hey, Vernon, thanks for your feedback. Always appreciate it. Kind of missed that classical music in the background. But regarding the ringtone, thank you for sharing those stories about call signs. The ringtone, I can tell you what to do or how to do it with an iOS device, but I can't with your Samsung, which I'm assuming is most likely an Android operating system. I know that on iTunes and iOS devices, you change the file type to M4A, I believe is the file designation. But you could probably Google that and find out how to do it with an Android phone. I don't think it's that difficult, but you have to do some manipulation with the the file suffix, or the, yeah, is that what you call that? The file type. And then the phone will go, oh, that's a ringtone. Okay. So maybe somebody out there listening can send a link to me, and then I can forward it to Vernon in Fort Morgan, Colorado. Thank you, Vernon, for that. And Pilot Pip sent me some feedback. So let's see here. Let's see what he has to say.
Hi there, Captain Jeff. It's Pilot Pop here. I'm
Pop.
Pilot Pip's evil twin brother. I know Pip only ever sends you feedback when he wants to shamelessly self-plug his own show, but I'm not
Tell me
doing that
about
today. Actually, I wanted to give you some feedback on a story that you and Steph talked about on the last episode, and it was the story of the BA pilot in Dublin who apparently refused to vacate the runway because he wasn't ready for departure. And it caused quite a stir. I saw this clip on YouTube and I read about it on various pilot forums, and I don't think it was really fair, some of the criticism and flack he received. He was called arrogant, and people accused him of not caring what was going on around him. And I don't think that's the case, and I don't think it was fair criticism at all. Now, I don't think really that either one of them, the controller or the pilot here, covered themselves in glory with this little incident. But I do think there was more to the story than perhaps was we were led to believe. Now, we didn't hear the full audio clip. There was obviously something else had happened before he was at the holding point. But you and I know that when you reach the holding point and you say you're ready for departure, that's not the end of the story. Once you're cleared to line up, then there's another checklist that you have to follow. At least at my airline and every other airline that I have knowledge of, you then have a lineup checklist, which typically consists of perhaps 6 or 8 challenge and response items, things like turning on the TCAS, making sure that you have your airframe and engine anti-ice set to the appropriate modes. Perhaps your air conditioning packs need to be set in the correct configuration. External lighting, this kind of thing. And it's a challenge and response, and it takes not very long, but it might take 20 seconds to complete. And it is, crucially, a safety critical item that needs to be completed correctly. So I think the case here in Dublin, he'd reported ready, and as he was lining up, they were trying to complete the lineup checklist. But unfortunately, they were prevented from doing so because this controller kept interrupting to give them a bit of a bashing, to give them a hard time. So I think he was well within his rights to say to her, as he did, stand by. And he said stand by 3 times. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. If I've got a safety critical item, then I need to make sure it's being completed correctly for the sake of my passengers. So if ATC are trying to tell me something which is not safety critical, then fine, tell them to stand by. Maybe there was an element of him trying to string it out a bit. But I'm a little disappointed that an air traffic controller wasn't aware that these things are going on with the cockpit as you line up. So saying you're ready at the holding point is not the end of the story. There's still things we have to do. So to say he was arrogant and caused 2 aircraft to go around, that's a little unfair. I think the controller can take some of the blame, because if she just, stopped yabbering at him and let him get on with it, he would have departed and those aircraft wouldn't have had to go around. Possibly. It's just another take on this little story. So I didn't want people to think that this sort of thing was going on, because, it's not fair criticism at all. Anyhow, that's it from me. Love the show as always. Keep it coming, and talk again soon. Cheers.
Well, thank you, Pilot Pop. You're Pilot Pip's evil twin. So I thought, maybe let me listen to this again with a different perspective.
845, there's traffic behind you waiting to depart. If you're not ready, I'm going to bring you onto the runway to vacate up 34.
Okay, just as a point of order, we'll just wait for the cabin to be ready. It takes about 2 minutes from the time that it's all gentlemen.
Okay, you need to enter runway 28, please. Turn right onto runway 34 to vacate.
Okay, right there. We don't know, as you said. We didn't hear anything prior to this point. So I don't know if it was conveyed to the air traffic control ground controller or tower controller that they would be ready in a certain amount of time, or if they gave the impression that they would be ready, and then it turns out that the cabin crew hadn't finished their safety briefing, etc. I'm not sure what happened there, but let's continue.
Stand by, Spirit 845.
Spirit 845, proceed onto runway 28 now and vacate right onto runway 34. There is traffic behind you waiting to depart.
Yeah, we've just got a phone call, someone. Spirit 845, we are actually fully ready.
Spirit 845, line up runway 28 and wait.
Line up runway 28, Spirit 845.
Now, if it had stopped at that point, and they went to line up and wait, and then they could have completed their final items of their checklist, as you mentioned, pilot pop, then I think everything would have worked out. There wouldn't have been a disruption of the flow of landings and takeoffs. However, I kind of agree with you. This is not necessary right here.
For future reference, Spirit 845, I suggest you would advise the ground controller that you're unable to take departure yet, and you should really be taxiing out to Echo 1 when you're not ready for departure, because there is traffic behind waiting that is ready.
Okay, and then that goes on, that exchange back and forth, back and forth. Okay, well, we are ready, but we need to complete our checklist items. So the point is well taken, Pilot Pip. So thank you for your perspective on that, and maybe there wasn't any arrogance there. Maybe it was just, I think that it started off, well, I'm not going to go anymore. So who knows? We weren't in the cockpit or the tower cab, but everything, I think a little bit of blame can be placed in both places. You're right. So I was going through some stuff, and I came upon a little clip, and I meant to play this a long time ago, but I forgot. It got lost in the shuffle of things. So speaking of Pilot Pip and the Plane Safety Podcast, another plug, let's listen to this. Let's listen to this. Why is it not playing? Oh, dear. Okay, hang on. Something is stuck in my audio player. Huh. Why is it doing that? Well, that's not good. Here, let me see if I can bring it over here. Stand by. Technical difficulties. My sound system doesn't seem to be cooperating. Okay, I'm going to do this. Nope. No sound there. No sound there. Okay. Well, I will probably edit this out in the audio and video, but you watching at home, kids, watching the live recording. By the way, I need to remember where this is, about 45 minutes in. Okay. I need to quit my soundboard and restart my soundboard. And there we go. Now it seems to be working. Interesting. Okay. As I said, I meant to play this some time ago, and I completely forgot. So let's listen in.
Now, those of you who listen to Captain Jeff APG will have heard a few episodes ago that he used a little snippet of one of my previous shows, one of my musical introductions.
I did.
And he commented on my fabulous musical ability.
I did.
Now, unfortunately for Captain Jeff, he didn't have permission to use that little snippet. So as we speak, a team of highly paid plane safety podcast lawyers are putting a case together, and we're going to take him for everything he's got. All those millions of dollars he has stashed away in his coffee fund. No, only kidding, of course. If you're listening, Captain Jeff, you're very welcome, and I'm pleased my lack of musical talent amused you in some small way. But with Captain Jeff in mind, in honor of Captain Jeff, in fact, this week we have a very special musical introduction to Topic of the Week. This is a little ditty called The Podcast Prance, recorded in 2014 by the Oink Spits. Take it away, fellas.
podcast. I like APG. I like Carlos and Simon and UKPT. There are many others like the Airplane Geeks, but only Plane Safety has Topic of the Week.
Wow, that's good. Thank you so much, Pilot Pip, for that. Maybe I need to replace my Java Jive with that instead. No, I don't think so. So anyway, Pilot Pip, the host of the wildly popular Plane Safety Podcast, and you can find it over at planesafetypodcast.com, I think. And by the way, and that was like on episode number 7, I think, 6 or 7, October of last year. And I just was listening to the recent episode where he had an interview, a Skype interview with Carlos, who used to send in audio feedback on a regular basis to this show, but now he has his own show. He and Simon do the Plane Talking podcast, Plane Talking UK podcast, something like that. I'll have the link in the show notes. And it's a fabulous podcast talking about aviation from a mostly a passenger point of view. Simon does some great talk about military aviation, and they they talk about year round, but especially coming up very soon, the air show season over in the UK. And they attend a lot of air shows and talk about all the things that they've seen, etc. But something that and I hadn't been keeping up on a regular basis with their podcast, but I learned that Carlos is actually taking private pilot lessons. So he was talking a little bit about his experience with working on his private pilot license. And I think at the point that they did the interview was he had about 16 hours of flying time. So it's very interesting. So check out the latest episode of the Plane Safety Podcast and also Plane Talking UK podcast. Hope I got all those right. So check out those guys. You know what? It'd be fun to do, guys. Simon, Carlos, and Pip. We should do a Google Hangout together and record that. That'd be a lot of fun. Not sure what we'd call that, but it would be fun nonetheless. Okay, so moving on with Mark. And actually somebody just today, I think, or yesterday. Today, actually. Let's see. Who was this? Thomas. Where are you, Thomas? Does it say? Thomas Richter also sent me a heads up about this, but Mark did this about 5 days ago. And he says, really? So he has a link to an app that calculates your flight's chances of crashing. And the name of the app? Am I Going Down? Wow. Okay. So I checked it out, and I think it's like 99 cents on iOS. A new app called Am I Going Down? ? Calculates a plane's chances of crashing in an effort to put apprehensive passengers at ease. Now, I'm not really sure that this is the app to do that, actually, but maybe this will help. I don't know. But I find that a lot of people that have anxiety about flying aren't really that impressed with statistics. You know, the old thing, well, it's a lot more dangerous to drive in a car to the airport than it is to fly on the airplane that you're flying to go wherever you're going. Well, that is true. But for those of you out there who suffer flying anxiety, does that really help at all? Probably not, because this fear that you have or anxiety you have about flying is not necessarily a rational fear. I mean, stats kind of appeal to our rational thinking, but this fear or anxiety that we have is not always, the part of our brain that is rational. But anyway, if you think this might help, you might want to check it out. Again, it's Am I Going Down? Am I Going Down? It's on the App Store. And as I said, I think it's like 99 cents. And so you can go through and you can put in your route and your airplane and the airline, and then it will give you the astronomically tiny, tiny, tiny chance that you could possibly be involved in an accident based on statistics and history. What was I going to say? Something tickled my brain when I was talking about, driving to the airport. Again, and you've heard me mention this many times before, I continue to see, and I don't really say anything about it because I don't want to be, that guy, but I look around in the transportation vans that we use, either the hotel's van or transportation that we've contracted with, or airline has contracted with to take us from the airport to the hotel and back. And I look around, and most of these vehicles, I'd say 99% of the time, have seat belts installed. They don't always work, but they do have them. And I look around again and do a little bit of a survey silently and see how many are wearing their seatbelts. I'd say probably 90% of the time the driver is, which is good. I expect that. And then probably 50% of the time, my fellow pilot riding with me is wearing his or her seatbelt. And then about 10% of the time, I'd say, flight attendants, the cabin crew, are wearing seatbelts. Maybe one of them, 1 out of 3 or 4. And but more often than not, it's usually just the driver and me wearing a seatbelt. And I'm thinking, why? Why is it that people think that there is no danger, that we're somehow protected by this bubble of safety in a van? And every time I ask them, I said, well, when you get in your own car, do you wear your seatbelt? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I never go anywhere without putting my seatbelt on in my car. Then why aren't you wearing it now? Aren't you the same person that goes around and like bitches at people if they're sitting in their, excuse me for that word, complains to people that they're sitting in their airline seat and they don't have their seatbelt on when the seatbelt light is on? Maybe that's what we need. We need in these vans to have a light in the overhead panel saying seatbelt on or whatever. Okay, enough ranting. I'll step down from my soapbox. Thank you, Mark. And I've already forgotten Thomas for making me aware of that app. Jack writes, after having listened to episode 151, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself after listening to the feedback regarding the United 747 at San Francisco bound for Hong Kong. I personally think that it is quite funny that a flight crew that is so senior, I think he's talking about a cabin crew, that is so senior and has probably been exposed to many pranks along their career, raised such a stink about some writing in the dirt on the back of the aircraft. While I understand that practical jokes hinting towards terrorism or accident should not be taken lightly, I do not think that the writing could have been a threat to the security of the flight. One idea I thought of after some time considering the event was that maybe a line mechanic or someone was writing the words, since that particular type of aircraft is starting to be retired from the main airlines in America that use that aircraft. I do think, however, that nothing can be taken too seriously in this field of public air travel, or just aviation in general, since there is so much to lose. This got me thinking about the bomb threat in Atlanta yesterday, January 24th, about 30 miles from where I live. The airlines received tweets saying that there were bombs on the planes and that they acted on those tweets. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have, but nothing can be taken too seriously in the aviation field. Sorry for repeating myself. Well, sometimes you have to repeat yourself, Jack. Sorry for the long feedback. Wish you clear skies, tailwinds, and the right phases of flight and no delays. Thanks for all the time you put into the show, and I speak on behalf of all the APG listeners. It is greatly appreciated, Jack. Well, thank you, Jack, and it's greatly appreciated that you listen to my spewing of whatever. I do appreciate all of you. I really do. And by the way, for those of you listening to the audio right now, and perhaps watching the YouTube video that I put out as a companion. I just started experimenting with doing some live streaming, and right now, in fact, I'm live streaming, and we have some. I think we have some folks in the chat room on my YouTube page. I set up a new channel called APG Live, and I try to remember before I start recording to send out a tweet. Right now, we have 11 people watching. We have some people talking in the chat room, which is very cool. And my idea was not necessarily to have this live thing going on in the background for all of my shows being recorded, but I thought, well, why not? I mean, I have the capability of doing it, so why not turn the darn thing on while I'm recording live? You get to see all the foibles and all the behind the scenes stuff going on. But I really was planning on just having the ability to occasionally, like I'm in the hotel room and I'm working on something, and just turning it on and just kind of interacting with you, the community. So again, the YouTube channel is I made a separate channel so that I don't junk up the regular channel that I use for my YouTube videos, and it's called APG space live exclamation point. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and that will be the channel where I'll put all of the live recordings. And I'm not going to do anything to them. I'm not going to edit them. I'm not going to fancy them up in any way, because it will just add to my workload. And well, right now I just don't have any extra time to do that kind of thing. So yeah, as I said, right now we have about 10, 11 people watching. We have Kappa, Hilo Pilot 842, Tiffany, Kappa, oh, I just mentioned him, Todd, Mr. Kilo Tango 1, Venkman 29, etc. I'm sure some others. Tom Seagraves, he was here. He had to leave. But it's just the kind of thing that you might want to check in occasionally to see what's going on, see if I'm broadcasting anything live. It probably will not be interesting, but for instance, the other day when I started doing it, a good friend of mine and fellow Acme pilot, 717 captain now, Captain Scott Jones, joined me, and I sent him a link, and I had him on in the Hangout, and you could see him and the two of us interacting with the folks in the chat room, etc. So I plan on doing more and more of that in the future. So if you're interested, again, look for the link to the new channel in the show notes. And if you haven't subscribed to my Twitter feed or follow me on Twitter, it's Airline Pilot Guy. I'll usually put out a tweet on that, and also my Facebook page, Airline Pilot Guy, all one word. So there you go. So now to move on, let's Sport Pilot Dave sent me a very short feedback, and the subject line is Maui Kahalui, and then he puts in the subject, or in the message field, OGG. And that was because Dr. Steph and I were wondering, what is the identifier for Kahalui Maui? And sure enough, Sport Pilot David came through and told us it's OGG. I used to know what that meant, but I've already forgotten. That little bit of memory in my brain has already been overwritten with something else, apparently. All right, Devin writes, interesting story. And the title of this article is, Why is United Airlines suing a 22-year-old? This is from CNN Money, December 31st, 2014. Patrick Gillespie. A young computer whiz from New York City has launched a site to help people buy cheap plane tickets. But an airline company and its travel partner want to shut him down. United Airlines and Orbitz filed a civil lawsuit last month against 22-year-old Akhtar Zaman, who founded the website skiplagged.com last year. That's SKIP, skiplagged, LAGGED.com. I don't know if it's still operating now or not. You can check it out yourself. The site helps travelers find cheap flights by using a strategy called hidden city ticketing. The idea is that you buy an airline ticket that has a layover at your actual destination. Say you want to fly from New York City to San Francisco. You actually book a flight from New York to Lake Tahoe with a layover in San Francisco, and you get off in San Francisco without bothering to take the last leg of the flight to Lake Tahoe. This strategy only works if you book a one-way flight with no checked bags, because the flight is going to Lake Tahoe. If you checked your bag, that's where your bag's going to be, unless you want to make a trip up to Lake Tahoe. It's not like these tickets are the cheapest all the time, but they often are. In the lawsuit, United and Orbitz called skipped lagged unfair competition and alleged that it is promoting strictly prohibited travel. And they want to recoup $75,000 in lost revenue from this 22-year-old. He said he knew a lawsuit was inevitable, but he points out that there is nothing illegal about his website. As a side note, I think that one of the tech shows I listened to were talking about this as well, and I think that this guy has set up some kind of a GoFundMe or one of those kind of crowdfunding sites to help with his defense in the trial. So anyway, according to Michael Boyd, president of Boyd Group International, indeed, hidden city ticketing is no secret among frequent flyers. He said that he worked as an American Airlines ticket agent 30 years ago and says he was trained at the airline to help customers find hidden city fares. Now, this is Jeff speaking. I really find that hard to believe. Your airline is going to train you to help passengers figure out a way to spend less money on your airline? I think maybe there's a typo in there, or maybe the person writing this article heard Michael Boyd incorrectly. That doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, if you want to read more about that, I'll put the link to the article from CNN Money in the show notes. Abner, and I think I mentioned this before, met with Abner for a quick visit, a quick APG one-on-one meetup in Boston. What was it, last month or a couple months ago, Abner? Anyway, he's a mail carrier in Boston, and he joined me for a beer, and I don't think he had one, though. I don't think he drinks, at the McCormick and Schmick's in the same building that the Park Plaza Hotel is in Boston, and got to meet with him and enjoy a little bit of time talking about aviation. And he sent this to me. Also, Mark at Flight Level 330 sent this as well. Hello from Boston again, Captain Jeff. Here's a video of a Cirrus landing off the coast of Hawaii when there was an issue with the ferry tanks. The CAPS, which stands for the Cirrus Airframe Parachute System, deployed, and we can see it landing in the water from a Coast Guard helicopter. If you don't hear from me in a week, send out a search party to look for me under the 80 feet of snow we were getting this later this evening. Yeah, so he sent this to me a few days ago, January 26th. Yeah, I guess they got a lot of snow, but not quite as much as they thought they were going to get. But so I hope everything is okay with you up there, Abner Bonilla, in Boston. Okay, so he sent me a link to this. I'll put a link to the YouTube video in the show notes. But again, this guy was ferrying an airplane from somewhere on the West Coast, I don't remember now, to Maui, Hawaii, and he was about 200 and I don't know if that was his destination or not, but it's somewhere in the Hawaiian Islands. And he had to ditch his aircraft some 253 miles northeast of Maui on Sunday when a single-engine Cirrus SR-22 aircraft ran out of fuel. Apparently, he had a ferry tank, an extra tank, where the seats in the back go normally, and there was some kind of a problem with the valve, the selector valve on the fuel tank. So apparently, all that fuel was unusable, and he went as far as he could and didn't quite make it. The engine stopped running because that's what happens when you run out of fuel. And then you can see in the video, pretty cool, the panel popping off and the parachute coming out, and pretty cool system that Cirrus has come up with this airframe parachute system. So check it out. It's worth watching for sure. Thank you, Abner and Mark. Bhavesh, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that he sent me some wonderfully delicious Kenyan coffee and a very cool mug to go with it. And as I mentioned, he was out in Seattle, San Francisco first, and then up to Seattle to pick up an airplane for his airline. And he says, Captain Jeff, glad you enjoyed our Kenyan coffee. I'm still enjoying it. Thank you. He's back in Nairobi now. We really loved Seattle. It's a very pretty city where the people are friendly. I never did get used to the coins there. He mentioned that he doesn't really understand the coins in the United States because it says it doesn't have the actual designation of how much they're worth on the coin itself, like most coins do. In our country, it just says dime, nickel, quarter, and you have to understand that a nickel is 5, a dime is 10, and a quarter is 25, etc. And he said that he'd just pull out all this change. He said, I'm not used to dealing with coins in my country. So he'd go to a coffee place and buy some coffee, and then he'd just hold his hand out with a bunch of coins in it. And he said, I hope that these people are honest because he just tells them to pick out whatever they need to pick out. And then he sent me a picture, which I'll include in the show notes. Here's a picture of my wife and I on our brand new airplane. Looks like a 737 ETOPS equipped from his airline. And a very good looking couple there, Bhavesh. Very cool. So again, I'll put that in the show notes. He says, back to reality and wanting help with some questions from Captain Jeff. Most of my flying is around the equator. Thus, we fly actual tracks the way they'd look on a map. So if you want to fly from Nairobi to Lagos, Nigeria, it's about 2,300 nautical miles away to the west of us. So you pick up a heading of, say, 290, and you keep it pretty much for the duration of the flight, and it will take you there. On the other hand, to fly from Seattle to Manchester, we fly a great circle track that doesn't quite fly the way it looks. Initial heading after takeoff is 050. By the time you're approaching Manchester, it's more like 140 degrees. I obviously Googled this, but would much appreciate a better explanation from you. As always, many thanks for the awesome podcast. For a change, I'm actually behind on them. Many thanks. And thank you, Bhavesh, for the question. And so I think the easiest way, I'm sure that Google and all the resources on the internet would do a better job of explaining this than I can, but I'll give it a shot. When we look at maps, normally we look at them in a two-dimensional view, like our charts or flat piece of paper. And they use something they call the Mercator projection, which is basically taking a three-dimensional track and then it's pressing it straight down into this two-dimensional flat piece of paper. And what happens is that it looks like a big curved line, especially when you're getting away from the equator, because when you're close to the equatorial region, the great circle routes and the actual flat two-dimensional routes pretty much look the same. As you mentioned, going west to fly to Lagos, 290 heading pretty much stayed the same all along. The only thing that's going to change is the magnetic variation. But up in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, we get away from the equatorial region and get closer to the poles. When you flatten out the great circle routes that we fly, which are the shortest routes, it kind of looks like a big curved line. So most people say, well, why would you, for instance, when I used to fly to Honolulu from Atlanta, we would, sometimes head way up almost into Canada and then come down and then almost from the north going into Hawaii. And then sometimes, like the next week, we'd be going down over Mexico and the Baja Gulf of California and the Baja Peninsula, and kind of approaching the Hawaiian Islands from the east or even sometimes the southeast. And that was usually because of the winds. But so what we have to do is we have to take our flat map and then think about it in a three-dimensional way, in a globe. So remember those things we used to have? I don't know, maybe everybody still has a globe. So if you start off on your globe and you put your finger on Seattle, Washington, and then you kind of roll the globe around and find Manchester in the United Kingdom, and then you look at your two fingers that you're holding on the globe and you say, okay, if I had a string, what would be the shortest string or the shortest distance for me to fly from Seattle, Washington to Manchester in the UK? Well, would it be going straight across the, like due east across the United States, and then out straight over the Atlantic Ocean and then all the way around to the United Kingdom, Great Britain? No, it wouldn't be the shortest route. The shortest route would be to head up toward the upper end of that globe that you're holding and go way up north over Canada, Greenland, Iceland, and then coming almost, straight down from the south or from the north, heading south into Manchester, UK. So it looks really odd. So as you mentioned, he started off by with a heading of 04050, and by the time they were approaching Manchester, they were heading more in a southeasterly direction. And that is, again, because we are normally thinking of maps in a two-dimensional way, and you have to think about it in a three-dimensional way with your globe and your fingers and that little piece of string that you have. And you'll find that the shortest piece of string that you can come up with, the shortest route, would be that route that takes you up toward the top of the globe, toward the North Pole, and then back down. So I hope that made some sense. I gave it a shot anyway. Thanks again, Bhavesh, for the coffee and for your participation in the Airline Pilot Guide community. Rick sent this to me, Rick Ruiz, the 777 first officer, and he said, I believe you mentioned this is the EFB technology that Acme uses, which is the Surface 2 RT, and he sent me an article to Computer World, and the name of the article, or the headline, is "All Signs Point to the Demise of Microsoft Surface 2 Tablet." Looks like Microsoft is getting rid of that technology and the ARM architecture, the type of chip that they have in it, and Windows RT, the operating system, which is an offshoot of Windows 8. Yeah, sure looks like it. In fact, I think that a lot of people would have said, even before Acme decided to use these things, that it looked like the end of the line was coming soon with this thing. So what does that mean for us at Acme and our electronic flight bags? Well, I think we'll have these things for another couple of years at least, because I think it's like a 3-year lease that we have with Microsoft. And I'll bet that when it comes time to upgrade our electronic flight bags or our tablets, we'll end up getting, I'm guessing, probably a Surface Pro, which is another tablet that Microsoft makes, but it's actually a full-blown real Intel chip in it, and actually runs a real Windows 8 operating system. So that's my guess. So I'm not too worried. Thanks, Rick. Luke sent a link to this very cool YouTube article, and he's in Australia, by the way. He says, something a little different that I would love to try, a full-size glider winch. And so check out the video in the show notes that Luke sent, and it is very cool. Basically, some folks that I think do have a YouTube channel, and they mostly deal with radio-controlled model aircraft and that kind of thing. But I guess they were invited by some company to come out and ride in their real glider, and they use a winch to launch the thing. It's very, very cool. So beautiful photography. So please check that out. Thank you, Luke. Dispatcher Greg just sent a quick piece of feedback here. It says, please thank Dispatch Mike for his very detailed answer. He's a very busy man over at Acme, and I appreciate the time it took for him to answer the question. Have a great day. So Dispatcher Greg and Dispatcher Mike, the two of you, shaking hands, saluting, congratulating, etc. There you go. Let's see, what is this? Ross in England sent me an article about drones, and you know what? I don't know if, oh, you know what? This actually came in after I started recording. So let me do just a quick little peek at this article from bbc.com. Oh yeah, it deals with something we've already talked about in the show, the drone maker DJI, with the firmware upgrade, which will hopefully keep the DJI. I don't know why I want to keep saying DJI Phantom and other drones that they make from flying into restricted areas such as Washington D.C. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Ross in England. And that is going to do it for today's show. I think we have caught up, believe it or not, with all of the feedback that you've sent since the last show. Again, thank you to all of you who have contributed to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the Coffee Fund. If you'd like to do so, head over to APG. No, airline. I wish I could get the APG.com website, but that URL is gone, long gone. So airlinepilotguy.com/coffee if you want to check out the Coffee Fund. And as I mentioned before, if you're watching the video on YouTube, head over to airlinepilotguy.com. Check out the show notes. A lot of links and stuff and pictures that I talked about on today's show are right there. And other information about ways you can listen to the show and get involved in the Airline Pilot Guy community. Join us. It's a lot of fun. What else? On Twitter, Airline Pilot Guy. On Facebook, Airline Pilot Guy. And I'm still, when I remember to do it, sometimes I forget, sorry, using the Swarm app, part of the Foursquare.com app world, where it kind of puts out my location. And I periodically will update that. And you can find that at Where is Captain Jeff, WHEREISCAPTJEFF. And that's another Twitter account that I use for people who want to kind of keep up with my whereabouts. And I use that instead of the regular Airline Pilot Guy Twitter feed, so that I don't junk up things for people that really could care less about where the heck I am. So with that, I hope that everybody has a great rest of your week and a great weekend. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless. I hope I remembered everything I was supposed to say. Okay, so let me turn off the iPhone video, and let me turn off the H5 recorder, and then I'm going to head over here to my browser to see what's going on. Okay, so it looks like we have Tiffany is back. I have to jet, but I like this live format. Glad you'll be doing it more in the future. Take care, Captain Jeff. Bye-bye, Tiffany. She may be gone now. Mr. Kilo Tango 1, great show. Thank you. Airports he's flying through in 2015. Kennedy, San Francisco, DCA, Seattle, Chicago, TXL. What is that? I don't know what that is. DOH, AUH, a lot of those I don't recognize. Any of you in town? Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably, the places that you have listed there, Kennedy, maybe San Francisco, DCA for sure, not Seattle, Chicago O'Hare, yeah. Charlotte, Tampa, San Juan, maybe. Wait, San Juan, that's San Juan, Puerto Rico, I think. No. SXM, I think that's St. Croix, possibly. Milwaukee for sure. Detroit, absolutely. So I'll be in those places. I don't know when. Let me just take a quick look again at my calendar. Looks like my next trip will be departing on Monday. What day is that? Monday, the 2nd of February. And on that trip, I'll be going up to Chicago, O'Hare, and then back to Atlanta, and then ending up in Augusta, Georgia, where I'll be all day Tuesday, the 3rd, and then finally on the 4th, heading to Atlanta, Grand Rapids, and Atlanta. And then I'll have a few days off and back out again the following week Tuesday through Friday, I'll be in Flint, Austin, and Little Rock. And then the next week, I don't have any flying scheduled, but I will end up having to fly because I'm not full yet for the month. So who knows where I'll be then. And then the last week of February, I'm trying out one of those 5-day trips that we just got added to our schedules, and just to see how I like them. I have a feeling it's going to be way too long of a trip for me, but we'll see. And on that one, going to Norfolk, Virginia, St. Louis, and a couple of LaGuardias. One right there next to the airport, and probably one of them is long enough for me to head downtown to the Roosevelt Hotel on 45th, I think, in Manhattan, right near the Grand Central Station, or whatever they call that. So that's what I have planned right now, anyway, for February, and probably going to be some more in there as well. Let me get back to the page with the Bravo Lima Delta. See ya. Take care. Hey, thanks for everybody for stopping by. And oh, okay. Kappa writes, the OGG code pays homage to aviation pioneer Bertram J. Hogg, that's right, who worked for what is now Hawaiian Airlines. So they just took the last 3 letters of his last name. So they dropped the H, and it's OGG to pay homage to him. Thank you, sir. And Kareem, hello, if you're still there. And thanks, everyone, for stopping by today and kind of watching the behind-the-scenes goings-on here at Airline Pilot Guy Central, Studio 1A. And kind of, stop by occasionally, look for tweets about when I'm going to turn on the live machine. And, don't be shy. Say hi. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. So until we meet again, I'm going to go ahead and sign off as well. So take care, everyone. Have a great day and a great weekend. Now it's time for me to work on editing all this stuff and putting out the show tomorrow. Bye. Let's see if I can find the... let me see. Let me turn that on again. And I'll leave that on for a little bit before I sign off.